Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. This is going to be very interesting because we have the amazing Sherreé Quam Taylor on talking about board giver gets and how they might not work. Scandal.
I know.
Before.
Scandalous today.
It is. And you know what, Sherreé, that's even more interesting is I don't know if I'm going to agree with you on all this. So I can't wait to have this conversation.
Love it.
Yeah, because we'll get into this. I'm I'm a proponent of this. So
They
I'm
work
going
in
to,
many situations, but
yeah,
I'll just, I'm anxious to talk through it with you.
yeah, this is going to be really fun. Well, the amazing Sherreé Quam Taylor, as I said, is joining us today. And this is a conversation that is so critical right now for so many nonprofits and how we structure our boards. Another thing that's really important for the structure of our, world are our presenting sponsors, and they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Fundraisers Friday, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. So I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy, and you might know Sherreé Quam Taylor of Quam Taylor as one of our amazing co-hosts. And indeed, this is true. She is one of our amazing co-hosts. But we first met, Sherreé, you and I, in the very beginning of the Nonprofit Show. Yeah, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And every time we had you on, I was just like, wow, I was so intrigued with what you said and how you said it. And then we added you to our co-host panel, which has just been amazing.
It's been so fun to meet so many new people and to kind of learn the ropes from you on how you do this show. It's actually been really fun.
Well, thank you. You come to us from the Midwest, from the Chicago area. I find that one of the most interesting parts, and this was a total surprise about forming this national co-host panel, is that everybody comes to the show with kind of their regional sensibility.
Yes.
What do you think about? Have you noticed that?
Absolutely. I think also, I'm sure you're seeing it from a co-host perspective, but even I have clients all over the country, and I can tell you there is a regional personality in fundraising, just how donors respond, what they are attuned to. It's so interesting to watch. And even I've learned, I work with a lot of East Coast clients, like city specific kind of issues that I see or opportunities arise. And so it's so fascinating to watch.
It's been really a wonderful surprise, and it is fascinating to me. And so I'm thrilled you're part of this journey with us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get into the give or get concepts. I'm going to have you start by explaining what this means first.
Right. So a give get for a board, and not all boards have them. Some do, some don't. But in essence, it's a rule, I guess, or a policy that says, and I'll use a round number today, $5,000. Hey, if you're a board member, you either need to give $5,000 or get $5,000. And so oftentimes that get could look like, oh, I'm going to have my colleague give, or I'm going to have my business give $5,000. It could also look like I run a printing company and I might donate $5,000 worth of printing assets. And so I think it works for a lot of boards, or it works for a lot of boards who get up to a certain point. And so Julia, like I created a guide, and I've been talking more about this. And I have to tell you, I was hesitant at first because kind of what you're alluding to, it's like, yeah, but hold on, like it actually does good in some cases, or it's just so known in the sector. But I was just seeing some scenarios, which we'll talk about today, where that give get was maybe hindering giving or keeping teams from doing certain things. And so I always tell people when I do a webinar or I talk about give get, I'm not telling you to throw it out tomorrow, but maybe just be mindful of, so that we don't fall into some of these pitfalls.
Right. Well, it's so interesting because it seems to me, Sherreé, that in this sector, you have a couple things going on. Boards who've never heard of it, who don't get it, and who want to institute it, but they're afraid.
Yeah.
They're afraid to go before their board and say, we're going to start this.
Yeah.
Which I always say, okay, no problem. Start it in 12 months or 24 months so that everybody knows, right? So that it doesn't just happen on a Tuesday. You can do that, right? You can enshrine something in your policies and put it for a future date.
Sure.
Another thing too, I've been hearing more and more about is a give and get, combining the two, saying we want to show 100% board participation.
Yeah.
Which is very important.
Yes.
And we want our board members to go out. And so I think what you're saying is true. There's a lot of ways to be thinking about this. Bottom line, we need to be thinking about it,
Yeah.
right?
Have the discussion.
Right. So let's talk about reason number one. This is fascinating. You're saying that this give or get policy, it teaches our board members that fundraising is transactional and not relational.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is my first of 5 observations I've had about give gets. And so we all know that we want the majority of our revenue coming in from deep relationships. So the model I teach, that hours to dollars fundraising, I want 50 to 75% of your revenue coming in from relational fundraising. We have a deep relationship with this person or this couple, and we are sitting down and soliciting them.
Okay, wait, back to the bus
yeah,
up.
yeah.
What's the percentage again?
50 to 75%.
Okay, all right, okay.
Probably closer to 75.
Okay,
I bring that model up because oftentimes that give get kind of runs into the door and says like, okay, well, here's all the transactional things we do as an organization. And so oftentimes I find that there's like an accompanying form with the give get that's like, buy the tickets, give me 10 names for the appeal, do the volunteer day. It lists a lot of transactional revenue. And so those things are not bad. However, if my board member is going to give an hour or two outside of that monthly meeting, I actually want it to be things that are building that network and a relationship with people who have the ability to be a mid or major level donor. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't matter if the board member is a major donor or not. Their greatest contribution to the organization is helping facilitate the depth of those relationships, which then eventually lead to a solicitation. And so I just find, Julia, that oftentimes board members are doing the wrong things when it comes to fundraising. And that form that's oftentimes accompanying that give get just kind of runs in as a transactional from the get-go. And so boards have to be educated of the type of fundraising that they should be spending their hours on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. I get it. I like what you're saying. And I think this educational piece really bleeds into how the board should be behaving and the organization.
Yes,
right?
As a whole.
As a whole. It's a much deeper issue than just this one part of what it means to be on a board. So I like that approach. Let's go to reason number 2. And this is fascinating because I've lived this as a board member.
Yes.
And reason number 2, you're perpetuating the myth that the get is more valuable than it is. Okay, this curled my hair.
This might be one of my favorite ones. Okay, so I think this is maybe one of those that's like it was great to a certain point. So we started our nonprofit. We had to get free services. We had to try to kind of scrape together to be scrappy to do certain things. But there comes a time, and frankly, this is why the majority of nonprofits in America have budgets under $1 million. There comes a time where we have to spend money to make more money. We have to build our engine. We have to invest in infrastructure, staff, all the things if we're going to scale. And so oftentimes I find that the board is kind of holding them back in this like mindset of irrational frugality. It's kind of like my fiduciary responsibility, but it comes out as like being irrationally frugal. And so I find that tone of a give-get where it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll give $1,000, but I'll try to go find something free for $4,000. It's actually supporting that. And so if we want our board to think about, man, if we're again, round numbers today, a $1 million organization, and we want to be a $5 million organization, that growth has way more to do with how you're spending and investing and budgeting than your fundraising activities. And so the mindset of the board has to be, we need to invest heavily and maybe more than we have in the past to build our engine to grow. And so I find that give get is like, we want them thinking like that. And then it's like, go get free services. It's like, so it's just counterintuitive.
Yeah. So I find this really interesting because I was in the media for 30 years and I always had boards that would want to place me on their board basically because they wanted free advertising.
Yeah. Yes.
Because they were advertising in our publications anyway.
Yeah.
And then they were always like, and I'm being brutally honest, I don't think they wanted me as much as they wanted my free media.
Yeah.
And, in the beginning, I didn't get that because I was so enamored and I was seduced by the concept of being on a high profile board until I realized, oh, and can you give us $25,000, $50,000 worth of free media,
Yeah.
And then it was like, crapola, I'm on the board. What am I going to say? No.
Right.
And so it was really an interesting journey for me to learn what I had, but that at the same time, I looked around throughout my board service, and I still do, at some organizations where it is inappropriate to get services from those board members. So, for example, I'm thinking of the accounting and the legal.
Exactly.
They should not give any, professional services. They could give an opinion or they can help guide, but that's really a no-no. And so I don't know if all boards understand that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I was thinking accounting as you were talking. And I think like the other one that I hear all the time, it's like an organization is growing, we're doing all the things. And it's interesting, like there's never enough money put into, I find, like marketing communication departments. It's like, well, the fundraising group can just do that too. And so that's a perfect example of like, well, we have somebody who will do it for $20 an hour, or I could find some junior person on my team to write the content. That is not an investment in our growth. And then, if that is a gift to the organization, if there are deadlines within that company, whose content is going to go to the bottom and back of the list. And so then it's a time thing, and it's just not propelling the organization forward. And so am I telling people to decline free printing or free? No. But there comes a time and day, if we really want to grow our organizations, we need to put our money where our mouth is and invest in outsiders, objectivity, and professional services to help scale our organizations.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think of the folks that donate things like in their estates or art or whatever, and then they're like, and we always use the probably because I'm from the Southwest, but the velvet painting of Elvis. We call them Velvises.
Yeah,
and it's like, this should be in the museum, and it's like, no. And the concept of like what my value is to what the reality of it is can be dicey too, right? Because you don't want to offend that board member that says, you're like, it's just not that valuable to us. So very, very interesting. Okay, let's go on to reason number 3. This will block or can block a bigger gift. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So the principle I teach across the board is that we want every donor giving their best gift, and we want them giving that gift every year. This was a fundraising principle I learned very early on. And that is true of all of our donors, and that is true of our board members. And so this concept of we want our donors to give their best gift, our board members, it has to drive your organization. And oftentimes I find that if it isn't driving the organization, and a board member says, "Oh, I'm going to ask my colleague if they'd give to this mission," but then it's like, well, my gift gets $2,000, so I certainly can't ask them for more than $2,000. So it's like conditioning, oftentimes board members, to either decide what that person's gift should be, or saying like, well, I couldn't ask them for more than I'm expected to give. And so I see this all the time. I've literally sat at lunches with board members saying, I would never ask a board member or excuse me, someone in my network for over what I give, and I give the give get. And so I want everybody giving their best gift. And that like in the, I always say like, if somebody's best gift is $50, how incredible that they would invest that $50 in our mission. And we want to serve them. I want to share with them what their gift is doing. But the opportunity, which is where the money sits on the table, is if that donor is like, well, here's $50, and the Google machine tells us they're given 50,000 somewhere else, we have work to do.
Right. Okay. So I'm gonna give you this one because I was ready to be like, put your dukes up.
Put your dukes up.
Yeah, I can see that. And I'm gonna ruminate on this because I have not heard that voiced, that I'm uncomfortable asking for getting somebody to participate at a higher level than me. But I would imagine people are thinking that, they're just not articulating it.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to even the previous one of kind of the scarcity mindset.
Yep.
Our job is to understand what, like the dollar amount our organization needs, not the squeak by, what is the need. And then we as fundraisers and board members, our job is to articulate that need and ask a donor to give their best gift to that need. And so all of these are so tied together, Julia.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not telling people to throw it out, but just like maybe just be mindful of saying, are we budgeting to our need? Do our board members know how to articulate our need? Are we asking people to invest give their best gift toward that need? Or are we saying, hey, I don't know if you could do that again? Are we deciding, oh no, we can only ask them for 5,000. They would never do 10. Why are we deciding that, right? We just share the need and let them decide if today's the day they're going to be generous.
It's a really interesting comment because I bet if you went, we use the number 1.8 million nonprofits registered in this country. I bet if you went across the ecosystem of board leadership and you asked the average board member, what is that dollar amount that you need to raise? I hate to say this, Sherreé, but I bet not even 95% could answer that. I mean, I bet there's less than 5% of our board members that could actually be like, oh, I know that number, right? And so
I see that all the time.
Yeah,
and yeah, it's crazy. And like what one kind of pervasive problem I see is a lot of board members can tell you, well, our event has $1 million goal, or our fundraising team needs to raise this, when they might be running $25 million organizations. Maybe 20 million of that comes from earned revenue or Medicaid or a large government contract. But they're focused on, well, I just need to raise to this event or this 5K. And so they're missing the overarching need of the organization, which is what our major donors need to hear and need to understand. Otherwise, they just know we need money.
Right. I love that. I think that might be like my magical lesson today.
Take it.
This is an interesting one that I hadn't considered. Reason number 4, you're hindering staff from soliciting board members. And I got to tell you, I feel like once you're seated on a board, there's a sense that then you are disengaged, or you're cut off from the fund development team. And I don't know where I got that message, and I don't know why, but it seems like you're taken off of somebody's portfolio.
Okay. I said something, another one was my favorite. I'm going to change. This is my favorite topic. So I find so often that fundraising teams are not soliciting their board members.
Yeah.
They're just like, here's the invoice for the give get kind of thing. Or, well, they just send their checks in here. Now, here's the other problem that I see, and I'm sure you hear this too, Julia, and all the board work that you do. I go into board meetings and board members, I'll do anything but fundraising. I don't want to fundraise. I don't want to open my network. What are you going to say to them? Well, you're not gonna twist their arm, are you? You're not going to be a used car salesman. If our board is worried about how our staff will treat their network, there's only one way to demystify that, And that is to show them how it's done and to create a great donor experience for your board members, which means we have to model relational fundraising to them. We have to guide them, have the coffee, lead them, connect with them, serve their mission for giving, and then solicit them to show them you are not a used car salesman, and that here's how it works, and here's how comfortable it is, and here's how casual and actually really, really warm a solicitation can be. And so I just find that a lot of times board members are not opening up their network because they're like, what are you going to say to them? Are you just going to ask them for money? Because the team is not modeling that to the board. And so it is critical that despite a give get, whether you have it or not, you need to be sitting down and asking every board member for their best gift every year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think too that to your point, all of this would be demystified and more natural if these board members made the commitment to go on a meeting or a coffee, to your point, to see how this is done and to see how professional fundraisers navigate this. It's not just about being bold enough to ask.
Right.
I mean, I think that's one of the myths of this whole process, because it's cause selling. It's not car selling.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
You're so right.
And I think for some weird reason we get kind of underwater on that concept.
Yeah.
So let's go on to this next one. And this is a big one: preventing board members from giving their best gift. You talked about that early on, but how do we look at this? Do you really believe that is a I only have to give the 5,000 or 50,000 or whatever?
I see it all the time.
Yeah.
So I had a group come to me, and they were really excited. They had a $5,000 gift get, and they were really excited because somebody new joined their board, and they knew the previous board this person had served on had like a $10,000 or a $15,000 gift get. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. This person is going to give us a $10,000 or $15,000 gift because like that's what they're coming from.
Yeah.
Oh, they were shocked when they opened up the mail and saw that she'd only given them a $5,000. It's like, well, that's what the give get is. And so again, this probably ties back to everything I've said. It's like, if you are not, leading that board member through a great donor experience and soliciting them for their best gift, you do run the risk that they're just going to give what the gift get is. And so one question I always ask teams as I start working with them, we talk through all their board members. I say, now, are all of your board members giving their best gift? I've never had anybody say, absolutely, we know we're a top priority. We're, top 3, at least top 1. Never. Like usually it's like, oh, no. I mean, the one guy is, but no, they just kind of buy a table at the event.
Yeah.
And so I just see this so often, and so it has to be at the root that we just, as an organization, are working for everybody's best gift, and the board needs to model that. And the staff needs to ask for that. And it just needs to be the drumbeat of the organization. And so I see this so often, Julia.
It's really it's an interesting conversation, because it seems to me it goes back to that earlier point where a lot of times the fund development team disengages from board members and is being a part of their portfolio.
Yes.
They just like, that's hands off, and we'll let the board chair and the CEO deal with that, or sometimes even the board liaison if they have that. So and that's a pivotal mistake.
Yeah, and even like, I'm a big believer in that each board member should have a small portfolio that they're sharing with either the executive director or the development director. And so even designing those throughout the year, like there needs to be like a quarterly touch point with board members to say, hey, we said you were going to talk to Chris in April. Did that happen? Because we know we're working toward a solicitation in September, before our gala in October. And so there needs to be a plan and a shared portfolio. And so how would you work on that together if you weren't regularly speaking to the development team?
Right.
It can't just be the executive director. So
Yeah.
open those lines of communication, and don't let the, I think my message today is like, don't let the paper of the give get um, like stand in place of that relationship with your board members, for them either introducing their network, using their time in an hours to dollars way, or giving their best gift.
Very, very interesting. Well, we had a comment that came in
Oh,
today,
good.
because we're on so many different platforms live, not only just, our own, the nonprofit show platform, but through LinkedIn. Very interesting comment. And I love this question because I have a great solution.
Good.
This viewer writes in, give get often restricts younger leaders who are
Yeah,
not financially able to commit to these $1,000 plus agreements unless it's outlined as time given in lieu of financial contributions. This is not an inclusive practice in the nonprofit sector.
agreed.
Okay, so this is like my golden
Tell
key
me.
to this. I believe in the concept of scholarshiping because you're right. You don't get younger, more diverse board members. You only go after those people that you think that can write the check, right?
Yeah.
So if you scholarship this in, and you might scholarship it for, 50% or 100%, or for, the first part of their term, or whatever, you can create this. I'm telling you, you can fund this. I think you can get other board members or somebody to say, yeah, I will scholarship one board position, two, three, whatever it looks like, of these younger board members in recognition
Yeah.
of cultivation. Because this, this, Sherreé, and we all know this. You're not just cultivating the strengths and leadership for one organization.
Mm.
Our board members serve in other ways
Yeah.
in our communities, whether they're on commissions, they're in, nonprofits or foundations, whatever. They are leaders. And so they're navigating the betterment of our community,
Yeah.
writ
Yeah.
large. So I think this is a super cool way to get that next gen leadership coming in.
Love
But
that.
it's going to be a policy. You got to sit down, you got to think it through. You got to figure out how you're going to navigate, how much you're going to navigate, if you're going to fund it, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Or even like I work with some FQHCs, so federally qualified healthcare centers. Half of their board has to be patients, so like the other half might be people who can write $25,000 checks, but the half of the
right.
board are people who cannot. But what a richer board for having such a wide voice on that board. And so that's like another example of and so I love the scholarship idea, Julia. Like, absolutely. I know I have a couple clients who do that because they do want voices from every angle, on the board, and that's important.
Right. It's very important. And I think that, I hear all the time people of my generation, bemoaning the point that, well, who's up next? Who's up next? Who's going to replace me? And it's like,
Yeah.
hello, you haven't done a good job replacing yourself.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
haven't brought up. This isn't just like look around the table and figure out who's the next, warm body. No,
Yeah.
it's a cultivation piece to your
Yes.
point, Sherreé, getting people coming across our leadership, our board leadership, that they understand the process, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even, I feel like I don't see it as much these days, but even like 10 years ago, it was such a thing of like, well, we're starting a junior board,
Yeah.
which, okay. But it's also interesting on the junior board, the tone is like, but you guys, I know you don't make very much money. So like, you don't have to give any money. You should just fundraise. But then like, that's the feeder for the big board. And so then we've gone scarcity, like, oh, now you're on the big board, but now you're expected to give money. But like, we've been talking scarcity the whole time to you. So
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody can give their best gift, even if
Yeah.
you're on a junior board.
Yeah. I love this give your best gift. I think that's a cool way to plant that seed and acknowledge what it means, right?
Yeah.
And what you're capable of now at this point in a life is a trajectory that changes. It's
Yeah,
generally
absolutely.
it's not static. And so, wow. Well, Sherreé Quam Taylor, always magical to to be with you. You're fun. You're brilliant. You have this wealth of knowledge and energy. Sherreé Quam Taylor, CEO of Quam Taylor. Her website is beautiful.
Oh,
Quam,
thank you.
Quam Taylor, TAYLOR.com. She has a lot of free resources on it. She has a lot of thought pieces. Sherreé, you have your own podcast, right?
I do. Business Behind Fundraising. I have a special guest coming up this month.
Ooh.
I might be looking at her. I'm excited. And we're talking about boards. I love
Yeah,
it.
we are. I always have an opinion. This is like my great curse. I always have an opinion,
It was a
right
good
or wrong.
conversation. I'm
Yeah,
excited for people to hear it.
yeah, it was very, very fun. Well, Sherreé Quam Taylor, definitely check her out. I mean, you can see her appearing as a co-host on the Nonprofit Show as well. A very, very busy woman. Hey, another group who's incredibly busy supporting us. Those are our presenting sponsors. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Fundraisers Friday. This is a new episode on Fridays, just
Love it.
dedicated to those folks doing fundraising. I do it with Tony Bell, Mr. Nonprofit Consultancy, super brilliant man, and it's really a lot of fun. So you got to check that out. Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. These are the folks that join us day in and day out. Okay, my friend, I'm glad that we didn't have to get our dukes up too hard.
I don't think we disagreed on anything.
I have to say though, I'm going to think about this and take this to heart, because when I train or work with groups, I'm like pro yay team yippee-yi-yo on the whole give or get.
Yeah. Well,
So
if you're sensitive to all these things, it works great. If you're
yeah,
still soliciting people for their best gift, have the give gap.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
I like your approach. I really do. And I appreciate you teaching this old dog new tricks. I think it's a good thing.
I'm appreciative of the conversation.
Hey, everybody, we end each and every episode with this mantra. It's pretty simple, but it's very complicated. And it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well. Thanks, Sherreé.
Thank you.